Welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast. I'm your host, Rich Herrera. Thank you for pushing play on my little podcast. I appreciate it. Just a reminder to follow me on socials at Rich Herrera and at Eat Your Content on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and give me a follow on your podcast player of choice so you'll know when new episodes drop. On today's episode, I am honored to have back Chef Curtis Duffy, a culinary master whose journey from a tumultuous childhood to the pinnacle of fine dining is nothing short of extraordinary. Joining him today is Jeremy Wagner, co-author of Fireproof, who brings a unique narrative voice to this compelling memoir. Together, they offer an unvarnished look into the life struggles and triumphs of a chef who has redefined resilience. Gentlemen, welcome to the pod. Chef Curtis, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Excited to be back. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Was really excited to have you guys on and hearing about your memoir, Fireproof. I read the book in one day, in an afternoon, and it was just a compelling page turner all the way around. I love the point of view that both of you had in here, and I'm really looking forward to digging in and kind of learn a little bit more about it. The book comes out August 5th, so it's available for pre-order wherever you get your books. So looking forward to seeing that on the shelf. So I kind of want to talk at first about the genesis of Fireproof. So when I think of memoirs, right, I usually associate those with people that have been in an industry for a long, long time. They're older, and it's a legacy that they want to leave behind. Chef Curtis, you're relatively young. You're a young guy, still in the prime of your career. Why was now the perfect time to launch your memoir?
Well, not as young as you think I am. I turned 50 in a few weeks. So I think it was just right. I mean, we launched a documentary years ago, and it just scratched the surface. And Jeremy, being one of my great friends, knew he was such an incredible writer that, it was important for me to, have my voice written, and couldn't have been a better time than to connect with Jeremy and say, he's in the prime of his writing as well. And I wanted to explore the idea of, collaborating and writing this beautiful book. And Jeremy immediately said, absolutely, I would love to. And ironically, we have the small moment where we both kind of say, but it has to be totally brutally honest with zero sugarcoating. Like this is not a book on fluff and all these great things that I did. It is really a true story of trial, tribulation, and everything in between. And it has highs, it has lows, it has everything in between. So there are a lot of laughter in there and a lot of sorrow as well.
Yeah, Jeremy, you come from a background of more horror fiction and kind of heavy metal music. I believe this is the first memoir you've tackled. So how did you adapt your writing style to co-author this book with Chef Curtis?
Well, over the years, my writing's always leaned towards dark fiction, just like you said, Rich. And when Curtis had approached me about, hey, I want to write a memoir, and I want you to write it for me. Curtis had read my previous novels and stuff. And you had mentioned right before we started recording this that you're a slow reader. I'm also a slow reader, despite writing full time, music aside and everything. Writing's my main gig. So I had, I guess, broadened my horizons as a writer over the years, where, unbeknownst to some, I had written and produced a couple documentary films, and also wrote a TV series for a production company that had this idea for a TV series, but none of the writers at that company wanted to write this stuff because it was kind of dark. It was like, think of like Breaking Bad and True Detective. The writers at this production company did more stuff like Friends, Friends, for dramedies and stuff like that. So I was already in this territory where I'm writing different in a different way. Writing scripts is a totally different animal than writing a novel or a memoir. And I also wrote what would be a 10 episode adaptation of the Allman Brothers story. And so I was delving into nonfiction and doing that stuff. And so writing a memoir for me was like an opportunity to broaden my skills as a writer. And but like Curtis said when he approached me, um, he's I remember it was a weekend. He was here in Miami, where his wife Jennifer's from. He's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something. Can I come over?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Let's talk." And then he pitched me this thing that, "Hey, I want to write a memoir. Um, I want to tap you to do it because I trust you. You're one of my closest friends." And Curtis's words, not mine. He said I'm a great writer. So I'm like, I'm in, but couple of things. One, why, like you asked Rich, why do you want to write a memoir? You're a young guy. You're not Keith Richards, right? Why
Right.
you wait till your 70s or 80s? And he's like, well, there's stuff in my life story that weren't conveyed in this documentary that came out about Curtis and Grace Restaurant some years back. As Curtis says, it glossed over the surface of his life. He says, I really want to tell people the true story of my journey, my culinary journey and my human journey. And as you've read Fireproof, it's one hell of a journey, one hell of a ride. And where Curtis came from and what he's achieved is so compelling and amazing. It's inspiring. And when he started revealing things that happened in his childhood and onward, I was immediately hooked. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see why you want to tell your story versus what was seen in a documentary. And the takeaway from this, we're talking 4 or 5 years, Rich, of putting this together and doing it. We did like 60 hours of interviews, right? But I could see in my mind's eye that the takeaway from any reader would be like, that was a hell of a ride. But also that inspirational, positive end, if you will, of the memoir. So anyway, once we got through why Curtis wanted to write a memoir at a young age, and it made sense. The other thing was, as Curtis said, I wanted him to be brutally honest. He wanted to be brutally honest because, frankly, I've read a lot of memoirs that leave a lot to be desired. That people are scared to tear the scabs off, if you will, right, and be really honest and tell the dirt and the grit of what's going on, whether it's their profession, their career, how they grew up, whatever. Curtis was an open book, no pun intended. And he said, I commit to being brutally honest if you do it. So from the get-go, we were like, let's make a memoir unlike any other memoir out there. Tell the truth and do it our way. And that's what we did. And it's been just a great event in my life working with Curtis on the book. Again, doing 60 hours of interviews. I know Curtis better than he might know himself or his wife or anyone else. I always say I'm the resident expert on Curtis Duffy. And when you do 60 hours of interviews with someone, you really get to know them inside and out. So that's how it started and the reasons why Curtis wanted to do it and what we've accomplished with Fireproof.
So, Chef Curtis, how did revisiting your past in this format, it's one thing to live through it and have those memories of it, but having to sit down and talk to somebody about it and through it in a narrative fashion, how did that affect you through the writing process?
Um, Great question. I think, for me, it was, first of all, Jeremy's a great interviewer. He asks a lot of great questions and questions that are not the normal ones that you would normally receive. And, through those 60 hours, obviously it was in multiple facets as we did some in Miami, we did some in Chicago, we did some wherever we could in the moment, just always talking, always communicating. It was very therapeutic in a sense that I was able to relive some great stories and also relive some terrible stories and stories that I had forgotten, stories that maybe I have pushed under the rug and had forgotten about, or purposely or intentionally. And they were stories that, there were moments where I had find myself on an airplane seems to be a lot of the times when those stories would pop into my brain. And then I would get off the plane and I would call Jeremy to be the first person to call and say, "Hey, I have this story. I remembered it, while I was on this flight." And then we would decide whether it went into the book or not. But, ultimately it was just very therapeutic in a sense that, I got to deal with some of the issues that I had maybe pushed under the rug. And I'm thankful for writing it, thankful for, being able to express, some inner demons, if you will.
Yeah. So Jeremy, 60 hours of interviews, that's a lot of time spent, a lot of digging through some of Curtis's past. What was the most challenging aspect of capturing his voice and experiences authentically in this book?
The the whole process, when you do 60 hours of interviews with somebody, there's transcribing. So imagine transcribing all those audio interviews. So that was a big uh, undertaking. And once I had everything transcribed, it's piecing together his story. Where are we going to start, and how are we going to weave in his personal journey, the culinary journey, and weave it all together to make this book. So from the get-go, getting the interviews transcribed was maybe the biggest hurdle. Once I got that done, it was more of a actual. It might sound funny, but I enjoyed the work cobbling that together. And as Curtis said, along the way, as I'm, developmentally editing and shaping this book, he would come out of the blue with like a phone call. "Hey, I just remembered something I totally forgot." Right. So I'm like, "All right, let me make a note of it. And then let's talk so I can record what you have to say about this moment that you just remembered out of the blue." And uh, along the way, as Curtis said, when he says it was therapeutic for him, I could tell that that was true. It was very cathartic for him to get these things out on the table. Because as you've read Fireproof, Rich, there's some very heavy parts. And you see how Fireproof comes out right out of the gate. Young Curtis Duffy with detectives having to look at autopsy photos of his parents. That's right where you come out as a reader and you're like, what the hell is going on? And all that stuff, the good, the bad, and the ugly, was cathartic for Curtis. We both cried a lot together and laughed a lot as well along the way. It's just him and me one on one, whether it was in Miami or Chicago during the interview process. Just a lot of emotion, and his commitment to being brutally honest and leaving no stone unturned was fantastic. Because that's, again, for me as a writer, I don't want to write anything I'm not into, or again, anything that's going to be boring, right? So Curtis delivered across the board. And it was even up until we got our publication date, Rich, Curtis was still delivering material, from either his memory or something else personal, be a photograph or something else. And we wove it all together. And mind you, over the 4 or 5 years working on this book, a lot has happened in Curtis's life. Grace Restaurant ending, creating Ever Restaurant during COVID. Imagine that, like we have a brand new restaurant and there's restrictions on dining. And he rose above and got through that. And he had After Lounge built and all this other stuff. He got married, so there's a lot that happened in 5 years of putting this book together that I wanted to get in, before we had to get to the finish line of, hey, deliver the book on this deadline. We have a publication date. The whole experience overall was just really fantastic. And I think other than any new event happening in the next couple days, we've got the whole Curtis Duffy story, and for me, my experience as a writer, writing this memoir was absolutely fantastic. Again, it was a different animal. It's not a novel. It's not a script. This is his story. And to your question about capturing Curtis's voice, my thought process was, I'm going to have Curtis's dialogue straight out of his mouth, telling the story first person, but I'm going to weave in these things that immerse the reader into his shoes and his environment, whether he was 5 years old or 45 years old. When you read it, you're in his head and where he's at. So I just took what he told me, got creative, but gave his true voice in dialogue, if you will. And that's what made Fireproof what it is, this collaboration, I guess,
Yeah, those first couple of pages you were talking about is what sucked me into the book and what made me keep reading it. I mean, it essentially started in media res, right in the middle of the action, and me wanting to read it in one afternoon is like, how did we get here? Like, how did we get to this moment in his life? Like, that's a crazy experience, Chef Curtis, that you had to go through at such a young age. Um, Jeremy, coming back to you for just a second, were there any moments in this collaboration that kind of surprised you or challenged your initial perceptions of Chef Curtis's journey? You two knew each other beforehand, but going through 60 hours of interviews, was there anything that was like surprising to you to learn about Chef Curtis?
Yeah, there were a lot of things that surprised me about Curtis. For anyone watching this podcast, our relationship up until the day he approached me to write the memoir we were very tight. We'd become really close friends. I first met him because I dined at Grace Restaurant, which was an incredible experience. I never had a culinary experience on that level in my life, between the cuisine to the service and everything in between. He delivered on every level. Just like in the memoir, Curtis bases his restaurants, if you will, on 4 pillars, if you remember that, Rich, which is it's not just the cuisine, it's the ambiance, it's the service, and it's the wine. Nothing can outshine the other, right? So I eat at Grace Restaurant. I experience those 4 pillars. I'm blown away. Him and I become friends, and we spent a lot of quality time together. But that said, it's not like becoming really close friends that I picked his brain and dove into his personal backstory in any way, shape, or form. I was only as good as that documentary that came out to really show me some of his backstory. So the process of making the book with him and interviewing him endeared me to him more, because his heart was open, and I don't take that lightly. And me pushing for brutal honesty and him being on board with that was great. But once the stories and experiences poured out, I was shocked and surprised at some of the things that happened to him. Growing up in a biker household, being dirt poor, the generational abuse that Curtis clearly states in the book, he wanted to end and put a stop to that cycle, break that cycle. These were things I was not privy to before interviewing him to do the book. So there were countless surprises, Rich, that just blew me away. And saying that, what also blew me away is hearing these firsthand accounts of what he'd been through, the tumultuous childhood, the brutality of it all, his aspirations to do better than his generations before him, his own parents, right? He aspired to do great things, get out of Ohio, and you get that right at the get-go of the book. And for me, taking it all in before writing anything, that also had a profound effect on me, because I'm like, this guy is really superhuman. A lot of people, myself included, if I went through some of the things Curtis did, I might just throw in the towel and be like, oh, I'll be stuck in this town and not do anything with my life. If this is what life is like and I can't see anything better, it could stop a person in their tracks with their life. But Curtis, what surprised me is he really inspired me and showed me that anything is possible in life. Anything,
Yeah,
you know?
I love the title Fireproof because there's so much symbolism in fire, right? There's the aspect of being fireproof, Chef Curtis, of going through what you went through in your abusive household, and any other person, like Jeremy was saying, could have thrown in the towel and let those circumstances consume them. And there's also the symbolism of fire of being forged by it, which I think is very apt in your case, and going through what you went through and reading through your book. I think your brother Tig is kind of an example of that. It's you both grew up in the same household, whereas he stayed in Ohio, like Jeremy was saying, and kind of let his circumstances consume him. Whereas you took that and let it mold you to become the chef that you are today. And the accolades that you have are a mile long. So I want to ask you this, Chef Curtis, all those personal tragedies that you went through, how have those experiences shaped your approach to running your kitchen? I know your kitchen is sort of famous for being quiet. You like the work environment very quiet in there. So is that because of the things that you kind of went through in your past? Did that shape the way you lead your kitchen?
Well, I would have to say it has something to do with it. I would be foolish to think that, any experience in my past life doesn't, affect who I am today or how I act today or even how I manage the team. You go through all these experiences through life, and it's you take the good and the bad, and you kind of filter through as your own person, and you figure out what works for you, what doesn't work on certain things, and what you're going to take from different experiences, and what you're going to leave behind. And I certainly think that you know things happen for a reason in life, and I'm a big advocate of that. And I think having the discipline from my parents and watching them struggle through their job, through their careers, working multiple jobs just to bring food to the table. And um, that's why I think it's where my work ethic comes from. And it just constantly is important for me to instill that in everyone that's around me. I try to be as infectious as possible. And that's just shown by my type of leadership. I lead by example, and there's nothing in that restaurant that I wouldn't do, that I wouldn't ask anybody else to do. I would pick up garbage from the employee bathroom. If somebody dropped a paper towel in there, I'll be the first guy to pick it up if I'm the next one in there. And I would expect somebody else to do the same. There was nothing in there I wouldn't do.
Yeah. So in the book too, you talk a lot about mentorship, and how mentorship is a huge part of just the culinary industry as a standard. You've staged at a lot of places, and staging is a important piece of starting your culinary journey. So Chef Curtis, you studied under Charlie Trotter, Thomas Keller. How did working under those two heavyweights influence your culinary philosophy today?
Well, like I said a few minutes ago, I think those life experiences, those culinary experiences for me are ones that you set out as a young cook. You try to have these goals, or what you think are your long vision goals, and what are the stepping stones to get there. And Charlie and Thomas and a few other a few other chefs were my stepping stones to get where I am today. And you know, I worked for a guy named John Souza back in the day for about 6 years at Muirfield Village Golf Club in Columbus. And he was such a inspiration, a positive figure in my life at the time, a chef who was always in the ability to say yes to everything. It was very rarely ever a no. And, you know, I took that idea from him because I think it was such a positive thing for me. You know, your whole life you're experienced hearing people say no to you, you know, and it's nice to be able to hear yes every once in a while. And you know, I'm that guy. I'm that chef now. I'm the guy who's always saying yes to everything, with the understanding that it is done from a responsible aspect. That there's a purpose behind it. I'm not just going to say yes to everything, of course, but there has to be purpose and there has to be knowledge behind it. There has to be an idea behind something, and I'm going to support it 100%. Um, and with with Charlie, he was so perfect for where I was in my life at the time, especially in the professional and personal side, because I gained so much knowledge professionally working there. The idea of using seasonal and the best ingredients possible, and the idea on the personal side was like he was a constant force that put you in a position of being uncomfortable, and that is what continues to push somebody forward, is that uncomfortableness. And every single day you had no idea what you were walking into. You had no idea. You could leave that night thinking, okay, I'm walking into Saturday night service tomorrow night and I have a decent amount of mise en place ready to go for service. So Saturday is going to be, you know it should be okay. I should be able to get my stuff done and then look to my left or right and see what else I can help with. That's the game plan of a chef, is to like get your stuff done, look to the left and right, see where you can help out. That's how you advance in the business. And I understood that at a young age. So, but at Charlie, it was like, all right, I would come in that next day on a Saturday and almost all of my mise en place was gone. They were doing a photo shoot. The sous chef in the morning decided, like, let's just go through some stations and get rid of some stuff. And then and all of a sudden you're like back at square one, where you're like, I have no mise en place, and now I'm putting my running shoes on because I'm in the weeds. That was the constant MO at Charlie's, and it was great. I mean, I left there a 100 times better chef than I was when I got there.
Yeah.
And I could say the same thing for Thomas. I spent a short time with Thomas, 2 weeks, when Charlie's was closed. But I gained so much knowledge there too. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can imagine 2 weeks. You're only 2 weeks off for the year, and you spend it working. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that
crazy.
was always been my mentality, was like, I wanted that knowledge. That's how hungry I was as a young cook. I was a sponge and I couldn't get enough. And 2 weeks off from what I was doing, I felt like I was losing. I was going to lose 2 weeks of, like, come on.
Yeah, yeah. So, Jeremy, you were able to experience grace from a customer standpoint, but I'm sure as you were going through these interviews with Chef Curtis, you got a peek behind the scenes of how a fine dining restaurant is run. So, what insights did you gain as a customer? Kind of like myself, getting a peek behind the curtain. What insights did you gain into that world of fine dining through writing this memoir?
It revealed a lot to me because I personally, as a teenager, one of my first jobs was being a dishwasher at a restaurant, and I had this perspective of what a local diner, entails, right? Simple menu. I was by no means put on cook duty or anything. I was just a dishwasher and whatnot, but I saw how a restaurant ran and what it takes. But on Curtis's level, um, as a chef, that being your career, what I learned was, that I didn't know before, was the dedication to that craft, if you will, because you're talking about 17 hours a day working, in the kitchen prepping. You've got service, and then after service, coming up with menus. Uh, Curtis's menus change with each season. So spring, summer, winter, fall, there's a new menu. But the time was the one thing, Rich, that really hit me. Like, that's dedication to your craft. Because as Curtis mentions in Fireproof, when you commit to that, and what you said earlier, Rich, is that in 2025, because of social media, popular TV shows and whatnot, they make the chef's life look like, oh, this glamorous rock star thing. But to really do it, my takeaway from being with Curtis and learning from him is that when you're committed to this, you better be committed because you have a passion to be a chef and to be in the culinary business. Don't get into it because you want to be famous or a TV celebrity, right? Because you're going to spend 17 hours a day working in that kitchen, which means you're not going to be around family on holidays. You'll be working holidays, weekends, you're working. You can't have a pet unless you got a pet sitter to take care of your pet. And then there's relationships, that's a lot of time spent in the kitchen. If you're in a relationship, you're not going to have a lot of quality time with your significant other. And there's people who use the word, oh, these are sacrifices I make. Curtis, well, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but he said to me, he doesn't look at it as a sacrifice when you're working on something you're passionate about, being a chef. The time you put in, missing weekends, birthdays, holidays, your personal life, all that stuff. If cooking and being a chef is paramount to you, all that stuff just comes with the territory. And that's pure passion. That is really dedication to something. And in the culinary world, from what I learned from Curtis, is there's no profession like it. There is not a rock star in the world who plays for, whether it's 45 minutes to 3 hours on stage, to their whole day, be it around 45 minutes to 3 hours. That's one thing. You got a whole crew behind you and you're doing a rock show and then you're done. For a chef like Curtis, you're 17 hours a day and that's your life 6 days out of the week. And my takeaway was, that's amazing. I never knew that work took that much time and what it involved, basically.
Yeah. I mean, to get to the level of where you're at, Chef Curtis, would obsession be the appropriate term to get to that level?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to be obsessed with it. I think anything in life, you have to be dedicated, almost to a crazy obsession with anything in life. If you want to be a great guitar player, you're not just picking it up here and there and you're learning some chords and there you go. Now you're a great guitar player or a painter and an artist. Like, these are disciplines that take years and years and years of focus and time to. Anything in life that you were going to be great at, you're going to have to dedicate something to. And that's where a lot of people will say, well, where's the balance at? Well, no, there is no balance. You can't, if you think of the word balance, what does that mean? That means to stay in one place and not move. Well, for us, that balance is not. We're constantly moving forward, constantly chasing something, whether it's refining it or just getting better at anything,
Yeah, if you're out there listening, saying, "Yeah, I think I want to be a chef," and you're looking for work-life balance, that ain't it.
Forget it.
it
No,
ain't
it's not
it.
it. I don't think
So
even a chef's life, like, no, I think anything in life, any pick anything that you want to be great at, you're not going to have balance.
Right.
because you're going to want to focus so much onto the left of that and so much to the right of something else. Like, okay, well, you're going to have to give up something to get more of what you want.
Right.
So you just have to go into anything that you choose to, you got to understand that, and you got to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, hey, stick to the 9 to 5 and collect your check and call it a day.
Right. Right. So as I was saying before, I got an advanced copy. So thank you very much, guys, for the advanced copy of Fireproof there. And I read it from cover to cover. And there was one part that I read that I highlighted out of all 300 some odd pages. And it was, Chef Curtis, you were talking about your accountability board, which,
Mm.
not a vision board per se or a goal board, but an accountability board. And I highlighted two phrases that you said you had on the top of that list, which was forgiving of the past and deserving. And
Yeah.
I think that hit a lot for me because of the way that you grew up. It was very easy for you to, you know, this book could have easily been I hate my family book and I did this despite them, as opposed to embracing that past and shaping it to be who you are today, and then deserving, because in the book you were talking about your dad telling you you don't deserve anything or and things like that, but having to uh, accept that for yourself, to be I have to forgive the past and know that I'm deserving of these accolades, and the accolades that you have, like I said, are numerous and lengthy. um, Going through this in your life with this mantra, forgiving the past and deserving, when you first started getting these accolades and they started kind of rolling into each other, did you have a hard time kind of accepting that praise at first?
I still have a hard time with it. I don't accept it, because I'm still struggling with that idea of deserving it, and you know, am I worthy enough of this? I still struggle with that today. That I don't know if it'll ever go away. Um, we receive awards all the time, but it's not. I don't celebrate them. You know, and I should. I really should. They're monumental things. They're things that have they're just rewards, knowing that we've put the work in, we've done the work. And it's a small token saying someone sees it and recognizes you for it. The Michelin, the Forbes, the James Beard, all of these things. I mean, I just got an award the other night. I think I don't celebrate them because I still feel like that young kid that just was beat down, that I would never amount to anything and that I'm not worth anything. And that's I'm still struggling with that today.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I really wish I could. Uh, I think more so for my team. You know,
Yeah.
sorry,
And
getting a little emotional.
no, that's okay. It
It's
made
awesome.
me yeah, it made me a little emotional reading. I read that page a couple of times before I turned it, because I was like, wow, it's powerful. And you talk later, in a few pages later, about the name Grace for your restaurant, saying grace is the beauty of form under the influence of freedom. And I flipped back to that page about forgiveness of the past and deserving, and grace is really, if we're talking theological terms of grace, it's unmerited favor. And I think reading through that page, those two pages, and naming it Grace, where you named it as, the beauty of form under the influence of freedom, really is the forgiveness of the past and being deserving of opening that restaurant and being able to cook at that level, and being deserving of that. Jeremy, writing these words of forgiving the past and being deserving of the accolades you get through the hard work and dedication of not letting your past define you, but letting it shape who you are. What impact did that have on you as the author of the book, and personally as Jeremy Wagner?
Had a profound effect on me because Curtis, as he just told you, when his accolades are a big giant endless laundry list of accolades, achievements that he made and should be very proud of. And as I, Curtis's resident expert on him, and also as an observer, Curtis, an interesting thing about him, you could call it this, I don't know if you inner contradiction or something like that. He set out from a young age to do better than his parents and whatnot. And Rich made a really cool point, meaningful point earlier, that his siblings, Robert Jr., Tiger, his nickname, and his sister Trisha, they didn't have whatever Curtis has to really want to aspire and get out of Ohio, get out of that environment, and do better. Whether it was finishing high school to going to college and trying to get a degree, to chasing dreams. Curtis always had that, and the dreams he chased came true in many ways, whether it was working for his hero Charlie Trotter, or later getting 3 Michelin stars, James Beard Awards, and whatnot. The interesting observation that had an effect on me is that Curtis, he inspires you as you see his journey, and you're like, this guy achieves what he sets out to do. And excuse me, I'm getting a little choked up myself just thinking about it. But Curtis didn't get into cooking for awards. He did it for passion, right? So the awards are a bonus for him. And he'll tell you, who doesn't want to get 3 Michelin stars as a chef? That's an amazing achievement, right? So he's done that. But at the same time, forgiving of the past, and him not feeling worthy at the same time of the awards, because of the past, telling him, you're not worthy, you'll never be anything in life. That's what he grew up with. But so he's got that noise at his ears, but he still aspires to do great things and does. So to see him both achieve these things, but also be somewhat humble and feeling not worthy, it's an interesting dynamic to read about, or again, observe, right? So that all had a huge impact on me, just because it's just one part inspirational, but also the struggle within for Curtis emotionally is just it's something that I've never seen anyone go through. And if there's anything out of that to take away, aside from inspiration and Curtis's, that duality, that conflict of, I achieved this, it's what I wanted, I did it, but I don't feel worthy. And forgiving of the past, forgiving of the past is his parents and aunts and uncles and stuff. And a huge positive from that is, that's unconditional love. Curtis has unconditional love for his parents, for those that have wronged him. Not everybody gets unconditional love from Curtis, who does something to slight him by any means. But the point is, he has a big heart. He sees where his place is in the world, and that accountability board reminds him of where he came from, what he wants to do to better himself, and to deal again with that conflict that I call kind of contradictory thing of, I've achieved this, but I don't feel worthy of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
a contradiction in terms, almost like an inner battle in your mind of, I'm at where I'm at, and I'm doing what I'm doing because of my past as as a form of therapy, as a form of escape, and I'm getting all these awards for it. Like, why am I getting these things? And so again, reading those words just is applicable to a lot of people's lives, and a lot of people struggle with that, right? And reading your book, I think, can point people in a proper direction of channeling that. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. Guys, I kind of want to land this plane on a happier note. So I have a few a few lightning round questions I think would be fun to ask. Chef Curtis, what's your kind of, after a long night of service of tweezering things, what's your go-to comfort food when you get home at night?
Um, wow. I would say pizza would be the easiest go-to for me. Although
Mhm.
I've been eating I've been on this diet for like a year now, so um, it's chicken. It's chicken right now, but I think if I'm gonna binge every once in a while, it would be pizza for sure.
Yeah,
Pepperoni
yeah,
pizza.
definitely not steamed chicken breast and broccoli, right?
No, no, I had enough of that. So, so
Jeremy, you come from a horror background. What horror movie best parallels the intensity of a dinner rush?
Oh gosh, I would say that the uh, blood serum test in John Carpenter's The Thing, which is high tension, anxiety, and a lot of pressure. There's an analogy for you. The dinner rush from the kitchen's point of view,
Right.
to using a horror movie as an example. I would say the blood serum test in John Carpenter's The Thing is equivalent to the stress and pressure of the dinner rush in a kitchen.
I'm gonna have to find that one now. You got my interest peaked on that. So definitely gonna look that movie up.
But
And
when
for
you watch
both of
that scene, Rich, it'll ruin your appetite. So keep that in, all right?
and for both of you, if the movie rights get sold and a movie is made of Fireproof, who would you want to play Chef Curtis Duffy? Curtis, who would you want to play you? And then
Oh,
Jeremy, who would you want to play Curtis?
Jesus. That's a tough one for me because I'm not the big movie buff like Jeremy, and actors for me are, if one passed me during the walking down the street, I wouldn't even notice. I honestly wouldn't. Um, Tom Cruise, I don't know.
That would actually be fun. See him do his little meme run through the kitchen. That'd be hilarious. What about you, Jeremy? Who would play Curtis in your movie of Fireproof?
um, I would say actor Josh Brolin. And the
Damn, I was
reason
going to say
Oh,
Josh Brolin too.
that's a good pick.
is Josh Brolin he had a memoir come out this past year. I think if I say the title wrong, forgive me. I think it's called From Under a Truck or Under the Truck. And Josh Brolin he's to me an amazing actor. I love Josh Brolin's acting and the roles he's played. But his personal life, he actually came from a very tumultuous childhood, like insane to the level of like Curtis grew up in a biker household, and Josh Brolin grew up with his mom, and she had a bunch of wild animals like tigers and lions and all this stuff. Who, as a kid, would be running around free and like jumping on him and biting him and stuff. So you take an actor who had a similar, in not so many ways, tough upbringing and achieved success. He's got that on a personal level, but he's also a brilliant actor. And I think he'd be perfect for all those reasons to portray Curtis Duffy in a biopic of Fireproof. That's my knee jerk reaction to that question. Boop, Josh Brolin,
Solid
and
pick.
that's why. Yeah.
Solid pick. I agree. I concur. So, just to kind of close things out here, Chef Curtis, what do you hope readers, or what do you want readers to take away from reading Fireproof and learning about your personal story in such an intense and raw way?
Well, I think for me, if somebody took something from Fireproof, I would have to reach back to the idea that I was unexpected from the amount of support we got from the teacher aspect when For Grace came out. And I never thought it would touch that many teachers. And the idea behind it was, it was all new to me. Like I thought, okay, this is more like foodie things, and people that are going to watch it are the the foodies and people who are interested in food. Maybe some chefs will watch it. But the teacher ratio kind of blew me out of the water. So when they would come to the restaurant and they would eat, and I would always make sure I had spent time with each one of them, just chatting with them. I think with Fireproof, for me, I really wanted to, somebody reading it. I'm hoping that a lot of my stories will resonate with people, and maybe they'll connect with them on some level, and allow them to find inner peace and find ways to heal the things that they're going through. Everybody has a story. I was just lucky enough to be able to write mine and have Jeremy write it for me. So if it's in any way, if it helps heal somebody, helps make them better, then that's a big W for me. That's a big win.
Nice. And Jeremy, you got your first co-author memoir in the bag. Do you see yourself collaborating on another memoir in the future?
Yes, I actually have one memoir I'm working on right now. I acquired the memoirs of a World War II fighter pilot who never had his memoirs published. Happened to be my next door neighbor here in Miami Beach. Her husband, who passed away in 2005, had written these memoirs from his experience as a fighter pilot. And I'm a big World War II buff. So my neighbor Shirley, who passed away last year, rest in peace, she was like, "Oh, you're a World War II buff. My husband was a fighter pilot in World War II, and he wrote these memoirs that we have laying around here. Would you want to check them out?" I'm like, "Yeah, this sounds great. I'd love to read them." And I'm reading them, Rich. And this guy was in the same squadron as, if anyone's seen Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks' Masters of the Air, which was on Apple TV. This guy, Jerry Jacobs, is part of the same squadron that those real life fighter pilots were in. So I'm reading this thing, and the stuff he did, getting a Purple Heart, Operation Market Garden, to be in Still Alive Luke 3, which the Great Escape movie was based on back in the day, with Steve McQueen. I'm reading all this stuff, and I'm like, do you realize what your husband did, and what like how significant this is? And Shirley, the widow's like, no, not really. He never talked about the war, blah blah blah. So I'm like, well, this is absolutely amazing. I'd love to publish this memoir. So we worked that deal out. So I'm working on that memoir, and then we've got 2 other memoirs for my publishing company that are in the works right now too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. It's interesting
So,
you mentioned Masters of the Air. It's interesting you mentioned Masters of the Air because I immediately pictured Austin Butler playing Chef Curtis. Like just in my head, it just snapped in there. I was
yeah,
like, so there you go.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I want to give you guys just a last couple of minutes here to promote whatever projects you got coming up. Jeremy, you're talking about the World War II memoir. Where can people follow you on social media for both of you and learn more about Fireproof, learn more about just the inner workings of your lives?
For me, I'm at Jeremy X Wagner, pretty much on social media across the board. Jeremy X Wagner. I don't have a middle name, so I use X. And my next novel is coming out in October. It's called Wretch, Wretch, and that's on brand with, Jeremy Wagner style, dark crime horror. And then for Fireproof, you can pre-order it literally anywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any bookstore, and deadskypublishing.com has a link tree to everything. So anything Fireproof related is there. And then Curtis can tell you he's got his official website, curtisduffy.com, that just got unleashed upon the world recently, and that has a lot of info too.
All right. And Chef Curtis, where can people follow you on socials if they want to learn more about your restaurant ever and more about you?
Yeah, so you can find Curtis Duffy on Instagram at Curtis Duffy. Um, my own personal webpage, curtisduffy.com. Ever-restaurant.com after chicagolounge.com. You can reach any one of those, find information on Fireproof and any reservation you possibly want in the world to come and eat, come and join us. So.
Yeah, definitely next time I'm in Chicago, if I know 6 months in advance, then I'll definitely be making a reservation at Ever. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Fireproof is a great read, available for pre-order now, coming out on bookshelves August the 5th. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chef Curtis, for coming back on the pod. And Jeremy, great to meet you. And thank you for coming on.
Likewise, Rich, thank you, and eat your content for having Curtis and me today. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And to learn more about the podcast, follow me at Each Content at Rich Herrera. And if you liked what you heard, give us a follow. So I appreciate that. Gentlemen, thank you again.
Cool. Thank you so much, Rich.
Cheers, everyone.